I just turned 33 yesterday. I found Bitcoin and I might have been 19. I was like, that's a scam. That's fake. I'm going to be the hero that disproves it. First things first. No one controls this thing. Wait a second. I actually agree with all these decentralization principles. The price naturally goes up. Bitcoin, it's been a grounding and almost a centering tool. It's caused me to look internally and really define my personal passions, what I want my family to do and to be as they get older. It's made me obviously luckily financially stable. It's made me more spiritual. It's certainly given me lower time preference or humbled me. If I had to say one word that it's done for me as a man, I would say humility is the number one trait that Bitcoin has kind of like brought out of me.
Welcome to Sat Chats, the Bitcoin podcast where we chat about sats. Sats are the smallest part of a Bitcoin, the same way pennies are the smallest part of a dollar. With Sat Chats, we are building the world's biggest Bitcoin welcome center to serve as your gateway to generational wealth. So if you are brand new to Bitcoin, we want to chat about sats with you. Head to satchats.com to grab your slot in the studio today. I'm your host, Stuart, Bitcoin Dad.
And I'm your co-host, Chris, founder and CEO of Ithaca Hummus.
And we have got number 103, Adam, in the studio here today. Adam is I tell you what, let's go rapid fire question.
Yeah.
Adam, how old are you?
Yo, I just turned 33 yesterday. And my wife pointed out this morning, she's like, hey, just so you know, you're the same age as Jesus was when he started his ministry. So I think I'm like, on the verge of some new phase. I'm excited.
Dude, let me touch your robe, brother.
I'm in a genuine cut. I'm getting up. I'm getting down on one knee.
I need to swoop up some of that energy as you're walking through. You're like, who touched my robe? And I'm like, it was me. It was me. It was me, and I'm okay with that. Okay, I own it. I wanted some for myself. So where do you live?
I'm in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. If everyone who doesn't know, it's kind of in the Rocky Mountain area right above Montana. So kind of in western part of Canada. Summer here is unmatched. Winter here is just the death of everyone. And we make it work.
Yeah, winter also unmatched, but maybe not in the way that
yeah, right. But not in the good way.
What do you do for a living?
I am the founder and CEO at Bitcoin Well. Bitcoin Well is a non-custodial, which means we give every single sat directly to the consumer, to the customer, Bitcoin platform. And so our vision is that you can replace your bank with Bitcoin Well. No more bank fees, no more, processing delays, no more freezing funds, just pure Bitcoin held by its rightful owners, but still interacting with the traditional, what I sometimes say, legacy dollar economy.
I actually remember logging into Bitcoin Well when here in America, it was like, hey, you can automatically convert your paycheck over to sats. I was like, what? I was like, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yeah. So what, and what has Bitcoin done for you as a man, as a husband, as a dad?
Yeah, man. So yeah, I'm married, been married 11 years. It'll be going on 12 years next time. We've been together 13 years. I've been married 11 years. My wife and I have 4 small kids. We are so lucky. We got an amazing family, or I got an amazing family. Bitcoin, is, people look at it like some financial tool, but for me, it's been a grounding and almost a centering tool. It's caused me to look internally and really define my mission, really define my personal passions, really define what I want my family to do and to be as they get older. And so it's kind of helped, I think, like right center my priorities, I guess. And as a turn, it's made me, look at the future differently. It's made me obviously luckily financially stable. It's made me more spiritual. It's certainly given me lower time preference or humbled me. And so I think it overarchingly has aligned all of the incentives to give me the ability to really look inward and look at things through a completely different lens than I was before. And I don't know if part of that's just maturing. I found Bitcoin, at a super young age. And so lucky for me, I just got to mature alongside this Bitcoin ethos and Bitcoin mindset. But overarchingly, if I had to say one word that it's done for me as a man, I would say humility is the number one trait that Bitcoin has kind of like brought out of me.
Yes, let's go. If you love what Adam just said and you're ready to dive into his Bitcoin story in detail, smash the subscribe button. You know that when you do, you will be entered to win 2 million sats when we reach 10,000 subscribers on YouTube. Smash it now and then let's lock in. Adam, you said that you found Bitcoin when you were pretty young, right? So let's dive into your story. Where were you? What year was it? Who'd you hear it from? What was that like?
What was life like back then?
Life was interesting. So I was a bartender. I would have been 19 years old, almost turning 20, and found Bitcoin. Heard about it on some blog somewhere. Maybe I was 20 years old. Read about it on some blog somewhere. And like anyone that hears about Bitcoin for the first time, I was like, that's a scam. That's fake. I'm going to be the hero that disproves it. Right. And, lucky, maybe unlucky for me at that time, you didn't really have much material to read about. So it forced me to really dive into the first principle of Bitcoin. Bitcoin's comprised of all of these kind of single ingredients that have kind of popped up throughout history: decentralization, cryptography, private public key pairs, monetary deflation rather than inflation. And so I kind of had to look at Bitcoin through this lens of like, what is this beast? How is it comprised? What are all the different, pieces that make it up? And then, what can I attack in those different things? It's like, first things first, no one controls this thing. That's bad. Let me tell you why. And then so I go down this deep dive of like researching decentralization. Like, wait a second. I actually agree with all these decentralization principles. This seems really good. Well, all right then. I'm sure the encryption sucks. Let's go into that. It's like, oh, SHA-256 is actually unbeatable. Like, this also seems pretty good, but this will never scale. This will never work. The mining incentive is surely broken. It's obviously, not what they say. It's like, oh, wow. As it gets harder to mine, the price naturally goes up to incentivize more people to mine, which therefore increases the decentralization that I just realized was good. Whoa. Now we're looking at this insane incentive alignment platform inside a monetary system that nobody controls. And once I kind of wrapped my head around that, I was like, this is probably the best thing since sliced bread. This is probably like the number one form of money on the planet. And I got to buy some. And so went to go try to buy Bitcoin. This was in 2013. So you kind of had two options. It was wire money to Russia, to some sketchy like Bitcoin exchange that was going on, which eventually ended up at Mount Gox, or like try to find some local guy around. And so I searched for a few weeks. Kind of wiring money to Russia was maybe out of my comfort zone. And so searched for a few weeks around Edmonton, found a guy, had kind of this like sketchy back alley experience where I texted him. We met up at some, kind of dodgy part of town. He like jumped in my Volkswagen Golf, took my $100, scanned my Bitcoin address and bolted. And I was like, whoa, this thing sucks. Like this Bitcoin is not good. But I got home, saw some confirmations on the blockchain, and I was like, okay, like I'm feeling good about this. The miners are doing their job just like, I was promised. I can kind of see it in my wallet with confirmations. I can see a TXID on the blockchain. Like I'm feeling like there's some good things happening with this now. And then decided to see if I could sell it. And lucky for me, over the next couple of weeks, I got my $100 back, and I still had 0.1 Bitcoin. And I was like, all right, it's time to make this a side hustle. And so started just kind of being the guy. I opted to not meet people in sketchy back alleys, but instead in McDonald's and Starbucks. We had coffee and ice cream and chatted about Bitcoin. And I just kind of became the local guy that was selling Bitcoin. And then, a host of other stories between then and now. But that was kind of the origin story of Adam the Bitcoiner. But I will say, and I'll kind of end off with this note, it took me probably 5 years to go from Bitcoin as a financial asset to Bitcoin is a freedom asset. And that journey was really important for me. And my hope is that people can skip that 5-year journey and get straight to Bitcoin as a freedom asset, because honestly, the freedom aspect of Bitcoin, it's my belief that that's about 80% of the value that Bitcoin brings is freedom. It's not financial. It's not number go up. It's not price protection. It's you are protected when you own Bitcoin in self-custody. And that is that's the origin story behind me.
That's incredible. It really, must be something else to experience what amounts to a drug deal. That was real weird, but I'm going to keep trying this thing out. And we've had Bitcoiners on the show, just like you say, yeah, man. I mean, the first time I got Bitcoin, the guy texted me. I went down through my apartment complex to the back alley. He literally opened up a white van sliding door and was like, look, here it is on a USB key. And you're like, dude, where am I a criminal? Like, am I breaking the law? Like, what's going on here? So the level of your conviction to inspect Bitcoin and test out those different things is really interesting for me to hear.
I mean, what I love about everything that you just said, especially the end, is that it's very clear that there's something driving you, right? There's a purpose behind what you do, how you do it specifically, and why you do it. And it's bigger than just making money, I mean, that's and I think that like Bitcoin Well has done a really good job in their messaging, positioning, like that's clear. Like, I'm not surprised to be hearing what you're saying right now based on all my experience with Bitcoin Well as I think it's called Infinity user.
Infinite.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys make that like super clear right up front. And it's like, here's what we are and how we do things, and here's why. And so it's really cool for me to experience, like it all kind of lines up here.
Yeah, it feels like Bitcoin Well is an extension of Adam and his values as a person. And I liked hearing you talk about how Bitcoin is like several different distinct things that's been almost braided together to form this thing. Decentralization is a concept that predated Bitcoin, cryptography as well. And it's like, it's kind of coming together like a digital geodesic dome where, the bigger it gets, the stronger it gets. So, that was the beginning of your story, but I'm sensing a middle here, Adam, where you kind of grew from, hey, this is some really good stuff monetarily that could improve my finances or, number go up, all that stuff, to, hey, something's going on here. This is more than just that. What is that finance to freedom journey that you went on over those 5 years?
Yeah, it probably stems from, I got this natural, I'm very lucky that I'm naturally just headstrong. and if you tell me no, and I think yes, then I'm going to want to tell you all the reasons why yes, and I'm going to want you to tell me all the reasons why no, and then I'm going to want to make an objective decision. I believe in objective truth, said differently. And so what that means is there is a right and a wrong answer to, probably almost every single question that we as humans have. And my goal is to find that objective truth. And so, early on, especially as some young kid talking about Bitcoin, I had 0 people that I talked to tell me, oh yeah, you got to go and pursue this. Everyone was like, too risky, not good. And that for me lit a fire that was like, oh, I got to prove all these people wrong. And so really didn't take no for an answer through that season of my life. And what that meant was I was forced to constantly reevaluate my decisions, my position, my belief, my conviction, and my business. And so through that time, I was in constant war with myself more than anybody else. Typically when you're in business, you're at war with your marketing because you got to figure out how to talk to, the better people. You're at war with your product because you got to figure out how to build a better one. You're at war with, the general market forces because you got to figure out whether or not it's the right time or product market fit and all this stuff. You're at war with your operations, trying to figure out how to operate better. I was at war not with any of those things in the business, but more with the world. I was not living in an environment, and I was not in an environment where the world had accepted that what I was doing was forget like good and a good business, but legitimate, and whether or not it was a good addition to the world, right? If you're selling dog food, no one's out there being like, dog food's a scam. You're a terrible human being for selling dog food. You suck. It's like, if your business fails in dog food, it's like, oh man, I'm sorry to hear that. Like, what's the next play? How can I help you? But when your Bitcoin business is on the verge of failing, people love it. They're like, I told you this thing sucked. I told you were wrong. Bitcoin is a scam, and I'm happy you see that now. And so for me, it was a lot less about, I didn't have that. I was 20 years old when I started the business, grew it, pretty much alone from 20 to 25 without much mentorship. And that was good and bad for different reasons. One, I had no clue what I was doing, and I had no clue how to scale it. I did not lean into, nor did I have many like business resources to tap into. And the ones that I did have were not helpful because they came with that bias that Bitcoin was no good. So I had to constantly look internally and sharpen my internal acumen, I guess, or really look internally to what my first principal belief and conviction was in order to actually make it happen. And so through that process, I feel like I learned to trust myself more than I learned to trust others. And that's got its pros and cons. It was very difficult to build a team after that. I had to basically learn then how to trust others and how to, delegate to others and how to lead others. And that was kind of the next phase of that growth journey for me as an entrepreneur and a business owner and a leader in the space. But in the early days, it was pure grit and survival behind how can I continue to legitimize Bitcoin and show the world that I'm not wrong. And I think that coming from that place, it probably worked out, but it certainly wasn't the healthiest place to come from.
So I'm on Nostr, I'm scrolling around, and there's like a photograph of a younger Adam with a backpack unzipped, and there's like money in there. And you're telling this story of like how you were like physically taking flights and other trips with $1 million in your backpack to try to facilitate the exchange of Bitcoin in Canada during the early days of your business.
Yeah, man, this I would say is probably the beginning of my journey towards like what radicalized me, so to speak. Throughout that time, as I just mentioned, I was, running a cash business. I had some Bitcoin ATMs. I was selling Bitcoin. I'm not sure if you know this, but banks don't particularly love Bitcoin. And so from the time when I was 20 to 25, I was in the process of what I realize now to be a mass operation choke point job where I am now federally debanked in Canada. I have no ability to deposit, forget cash. I cannot deposit a paycheck and pay a power bill out of a checking account in federal banks in Canada. And so through that process, I still had the business to run. And, most people might have thought, oh, well, that sucks, better quit. And I was just like, dig in further, banks don't want me, business got harder, must do it more. And so my response to that was, okay, I will, I didn't have a bank. Armored cars wouldn't work with me because I had no bank. So there was really one option, and it was drive around in my Ford Focus, pick up cash and fly around to make deals. And that's exactly what I did. So yeah, the story you're referencing, this was over a longer period of time, but I ended up with basically a little over $1 million in cash that I had to get into Bitcoin. And so I arranged a multi-trip city to do deals with whales to bathe, me giving them cash, them giving me Bitcoin, or in some cases, even vice versa, just the way that the trip worked out. And I arranged basically, I think it was about 36 hours where I traveled from, I think it was Edmonton to Calgary to Saskatoon, back to Calgary to Winnipeg to Toronto to Montreal, and then out to the Maritimes, and then back to Toronto, and then back to Edmonton. And did the whole thing with quite literally $1 million on my backpack, and then flew home with an empty bag and a toothbrush. That was kind of it. And it was, yeah, man, it was crazy. And that was the start of when I realized, hey, everything I earn, all of the value that I stack up for me and my family over the next 50, 60 years of me working is going to be subject to whether or not the banks like what I'm doing. And that petrified me. I don't think people believe me when I tell them I don't have a bank account, but it was petrifying not being able to have, like, you can't pay taxes in cash, you can't buy a car in cash, you can't buy a house in cash, landlords don't take cash. Like, not having a bank account really restricts your ability to live, especially here in Canada where we have such a banking monopoly. And realizing that this probably is not going to get better, right? Restrictions almost never come off and loosen up. And so, as a young man, I was like, yo, I got a half a century left of working, hopefully more than that, earning money, saving money, being responsible with my money. Am I really going to let someone else dictate when I can and cannot spend it? And the answer was obviously no. And that was when, in my mind, things shifted from, hey, look, Bitcoin's a cool thing that you can kind of get rich on if you add it to your portfolio at the right time, into like, Bitcoin is the only thing that gives my family the freedom that it deserves. And that was when Bitcoin Well and the concept behind Bitcoin Well really started. We moved from making Bitcoin accessible and understood towards enabling independence. And if you were to chart my life out, there's probably a pretty serious pin at that moment in time where my personal mission, focus, attitude, everything just shifted. And I became a different person. I became like a butterfly evolved out of a cocoon, went through a pretty dark and tough patch, and ultimately came out of that patch, with a passion for enabling freedom unlike ever before.
You were debanked. You were debanked?
Yeah, man. Every bank in Canada has labeled Adam O'Brien as unfit to bank. They won't give me a checking account. I think half of them, or maybe more than half now, have also said that my wife is unfit for a checking account because we don't fit their risk. My stay-at-home wife, by the way, who looks after our 4 kids, is too risky to bank due to their compliance policies. And this is part of the frustration that I had, was the banks would say, hey, you can't bank here. And I'd say, why? And they'd say compliance. And I'd say, no problem. I had an ex-banker, someone who literally wrote your compliance policy. Yeah, he wrote my compliance policy too. And I made sure that it was going to be, A-okay with the banks. I made sure to follow your risk guidelines. Like, I've got compliance policies like you wouldn't believe. Can I show them to you? And they're like, nah, we don't want to see them. And I was like, so how do you know that my compliance is no good if you're not even going to check my compliance? Like, what's going on here? And so it was at that point, again, like I kind of knew what the deal was going to be. This was no longer logical. This wasn't something that was going to be, a simple misunderstanding that we cleared up a couple days later. This was strategic and targeted. And, I was going to have to learn to live without a bank. And as a result, we built Bitcoin Well. Now, like, our tagline is replace your bank with Bitcoin Well. That's not an accident. I'm building a platform that I need and that my family needs. And it just so happens that 50,000 other people in Canada and the USA decide that they also need that platform.
That's right, including these 2 fine young men you see here before you.
Let's go.
When did you meet your wife?
My wife's called Christina. I met her when she was 19 and I was 20. So right around the same time that I found Bitcoin. Actually, she might have been 18 and I might have been 19. So really, really early. And I found Bitcoin very shortly after I found her, I think. And I'm like I'm not sure if y'all can tell, but I'm an extremist. Like, I just do everything at 110%. And I met her 3 weeks later. I told her I was going to marry her, and she told me, "Let's go on a date first." So we did that, and then we went on a date, and then a year and a half later we got married, and then about a year after that we had our first kid, and we've been 11 years, and I think that's been one of the single greatest thing that could have ever happened to me was attaching myself to someone who complements my strengths, highlights my weaknesses, and is so just understands me so well that I have the ability to have this like second set of eyes to kind of catch the gaps, and also a life partner that I trust with our children and with the next generation is just like, oh, it's insane.
I'm curious what your experience with your wife has been like since you met her just before you found Bitcoin, and your life has been really about Bitcoin. What was that journey for you two as a couple? Was she on board the moment you were on board? Did she go on her own journey? Did you help her in some way?
Yeah, she's definitely on her own journey. She's had she probably knows more about Bitcoin than most other people just because she's heard me explain it to so many people for the last decade plus. And so I think that she understands, or I know that she understands, and she agrees, and she can hang with, she can hang. She's one of the real ones. She understands it. Um, but I don't think she's passionate about it. I think that she's passionate more about the Bitcoin principles. She's passionate about what I'm passionate about just because she's passionate about me. But I don't think my wife is necessarily like her life mission isn't decentralized money. It's definitely family looking inward. If I were to explain our two roles in the house, I look outward. I cast a vision for our family, for the world that I want our children to grow up in. And she looks inward and makes sure that the family is safe and secure and loved and looked after. And I think that those two roles probably complement each other pretty well. She's teaching the kids about Bitcoin, like she's homeschooling, and like, money is a topic that we are obviously teaching our children about. My son had a lemonade stand. He's 8, him and his buddies, and they were like accepting Bitcoin. And I think they may have made more money in Bitcoin off Noster than from actually selling lemonade, which is super funny. So shout out to Noster, you Nostriches out there. But yeah, it was fantastic. And I told them they could only get the Bitcoin if they successfully orange pilled their customers. And so, customer comes up like, "Are you going to pay in Bitcoin?" And he's like, "No." And my son's like, "You got to pay in Bitcoin. It's a better form of money. Like, it's sound money. It's going to give you freedom." Like, he's just like this little, Adam parrot. So yeah, I think that my wife, like, she's on her own journey learning, I think, what's important to her that kind of surrounds the Bitcoin principles. But like when you think about, and I use that word a lot, Bitcoin principles, and you have to understand that money as we look at it today is so divorced from the original design of what money was. If you think about what money is, it's a way to store your value that you create with your time. You and I go to work, we provide value to the world, to one person, something, and they got to give us value in return, right? That's the equilibrium of the world. And we've chosen to use money as that value return. And so when you think about what is money, it's really just, it's your time. It's your time locked in a tool that you can use in the future. And when you understand that money is your time, all of a sudden, the world looks a little bit different, and your worldview shifts because the things you spend money on truly reflect your time. And your time is quite an intimate, quite a personal thing. So it's, my wife understands that very, very greatly and very, very deeply. And I think that, yeah, she's definitely on her own Bitcoin journey in that way. I should clarify. My wife has complete trust, and so lucky for me, she lets I share with her the plans and our financial management. But our financial management is literally Bitcoin and cold storage and whatever equity I have in the company. So it's like it's pretty good, and I do that just seems so like I sometimes forget that not everyone is a psychopath that has 100% of their wealth in Bitcoin in that way. And I forget that, like not everyone has like my wife's the best wife. And so I just have the luxury of that. So yeah, shout out to Christina who definitely, lets me, she lets me ride or die. And when we're riding, she's there for it. And when we're dying, she's there for it. And that's a special kind of woman. It would take a special kind of woman to be married to me, I think.
So you talked about your kids a little bit. They had a lemonade stand, which is outstanding. My son has been a guest on this show, and my dad as well. And now my dad pays my son Bitcoin to do chores around his house. Like they were cleaning out the pool, and then he got like 15,000 sats. And my son, he's all about it. You talked about like this future world that you see for your children, and like, for our listeners out there, what does the future look like if we keep rolling, with this land of US dollars and Canadian dollars and banking and debanking and stuff? And what does it look like if we kind of come over here to Bitcoin?
Yeah, man. I think that when I consider the future for my kids, I want a better world than what I got. I think every parent wants that for their kids. But when you consider how the world currently works, literally the money is debt. And that's not a secret. I mean, anyone can just Google it. Every government in the G7 has more debt, owes more money than they have assets, than future value that their economy can build. Like, it is broken. And so when you're constantly borrowing money to fund operations, to fund life, you have to borrow from somewhere. Now, I have yet to find a way that I get to borrow from the past. I would love to borrow from my grandfather and be like, yo, I'll pay this back later. I'm going to go back 60 years and just borrow from you 60 years ago with all my knowledge and everything. That's probably never going to be possible. I think we have no time machines. We can't go back in time. We can't stop the debasement of money, all this stuff. So because you can't borrow from the past and our current money is forcing us to borrow, there's only one place you can borrow it from, and that's the future. And when you borrow from the future, that future has to be paid back. This is the equilibrium. This is the physics of the world. This is just how, the earth works. And so when I consider a monetary system that is forced to borrow from my 3-year-old son, I got another son who's 3. When I look at him in the eyes and I think, yo, every single time I breathe, I'm borrowing from your future because of the monetary system that we live in. That pains me a little bit. And then when I think about my 7-year-old daughter and I look at her and I think, you're going to be the most amazing mother one day. Like, I cannot wait. She got all the best qualities from her mother. She got all the best qualities from me. She's going to be just the most amazing mom. And I look at her and I'm like, you're going to bring grandkids into a world one day and you're going to be forced to borrow from them. And that's going to kill you as much as this is killing me right now. And so I do think that we are called as Bitcoiners who understand what the future is, who understand what the current monetary system is, who understand that when you borrow from the future gets worse. We're called to try to change that. And that's what I want to do. I think that when you live in a society that is debt-based, when you live in a society that borrows from the future, you lose sight of what the future can be. The future gets worse. We have less kids. We get worse food. You have more divorce. Like, just bad things tend to get more normalized. And it's all in the name of, well, what are my other options? And I think that, we have another option now, and we have the ability to hold Bitcoin, freedom money that is, programmed and designed to maintain and increase your purchasing power. And I think that imagine being the guy who looks at his son 50 years from now and says, sorry, son, I blew it. You could have been, you could have been set up. You could have had the ability to take a risk. You could have started that business. You could have founded that country. You could have made this big change, but I listened to the man on the TV. I listened to the guy in the suit that told me what to do. Man, I just can't be that guy. And so, yeah, from my perspective, there's like objective truth. It's like there's just one right way to manage your finances, and it's stop borrowing from the future. That's it. Just like find me a better tool. The second you find me a better tool that can prevent borrowing from the future, all my Bitcoin is gone. Every single sat. Close the company. We're pivoting because there's a better tool to prevent borrowing from the future. But it doesn't exist. It's like Bitcoin is the best tool objectively to prevent the borrowing from the future. And so, yeah, it's a better world when Bitcoin is the standard.
A week ago, we sat around a table and we made a decision as a team to like really focus in on an even tighter target market, and dads like you, like me, like Stuart became that target. And how crazy is it that it's 1 week later and we're sitting here with arguably
the Bitcoin dad.
The Bitcoin
it's
dad.
The Bitcoin dad. Episode title. Episode title. The Bitcoin dad.
That's like everything I feel and want to be able to articulate. Like so well said.
Yeah,
right there.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
Bravo.
You're right. I mean, what really, when I think deeply about how I'm trying to stack sats each week in order to save up for the future for my kids, and my government is printing money that is in fact borrowing from my 12-year-old son, borrowing from my 10-year-old baby girl, borrowing from my son's son, man. I'm the fourth Arthur Pelto in an unbroken line of 5. And the US government's like, yeah, the 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th Arthur Peltos, we're going to go ahead and need them to be born, grow up, develop skills, and add to the marketplace so that they can backfill how much we are borrowing from the future. And it makes me furious to think about how our government just gets to do that. You know, it's like, that's not fair, man. That's not fair.
There's actually, I want to touch on that quickly because there's actually a biblical spiritual component to this. The term fiat, and this is borrowed from Alan Armstrong. His name's Pastor Quinn on Twitter, and he does it so well. The term fiat literally means to decree. They get to make from nothing. And the Bible actually says God can fiat. Obviously, it's in like a different language, but that's the translation because God decreed. God built the world from nothing. And the government has bastardized that comment so bad, or that ethos so bad, where now we say the government can fiat. We literally call it a fiat currency. It is a decreed currency spoken about by the lips of man, which kind of, if you think about it, and this is where you're going to have to get a little bit, remove yourself from the physics. But when you really think about that deeply, it kind of is the government trying to assume the position of God, which really offends me. And it really makes my insides upset, because no man should be able to pretend to be God. And the government gets to do that every single time they decree, every single time they fiat money into existence.
And then they say things like, in God we trust.
Totally.
Give me a break.
It should say, in us we trust. Yeah. And you better trust too, because we have guns. So let's imagine that we've got a dad listening to your episode, Adam. He is a pre-coiner. He's feeling the pressure. He's working a job. He's trying to make ends meet. He might even be getting raises or getting the raise you get when you get a new job. And it's still not enough. And he's like, what? And where am I? What's going on? How, he's like thinking, well, I guess I'll just retire into a part-time job. And then when I'm completely useless, I'll just hand out stickers as an old man to the people who come into a Walmart until I just like die right inside the store. I don't know. What can that guy do to get started? What can that guy do to take his first steps into Bitcoin?
I think really understand why and make a decision. I think that men, dads, we got 2 choices that govern our entire life. Do you want an easy life, or do you want a good life? And when you decide which one you want, every other decision kind of just lines up into place. If you want an easy life, Dad, don't change anything. You're going to have a very easy life. You're going to be very controlled. You're going to, scrape it by, and you're going to probably, have to work a little harder. But your decisions will be made for you. And so off you go. But if you want a shot at a good life, I would recommend 2% of your income monthly goes into Bitcoin. Doesn't matter what the price is. Don't even look at the price. Get a Bitcoin wallet. If you make $1,000, put 20 into Bitcoin, sir. Don't debate it. Don't wait for the bears. Don't wait for, Jim Cramer to tell you it's a good or a bad idea. Don't listen to Bitcoin Twitter. Just hit it. Smash buy, $20. You can afford it. Trust me. I've never, ever, ever met a person that literally is so well documented and so well budgeted that they don't have 2% floating into the ether. And if you are that person and you're the edge case that can't, find a less important thing than generational wealth that is 2% of your budget and cut it. And it is my prediction that you go through your kid's childhood stacking 2% of your income. By the time your kid is of age, hits that coveted 15 to 18-year-old age range, that 2% will be worth 50+% of your net worth. And you get the luxury of looking your kid in the eye and saying, I set you up for success. But there's a second part to that. After you commit to this 2%, stacking commitment, whatever you want to call it. And by the way, there's no financial advisor involved. There's no Bitcoin well involved. There's no Sats chat involved. That's a promise that you're going to make to yourself and to your future that you're just going to buy Bitcoin regardless of price, 2%. And if you use Bitcoin well to do that, great. We're going to help you along the way. But I'm not you just use the platform that's right for you. Bitcoin well is the fastest, safest, and cheapest way to do that. So go ahead. But if you like making, different decisions, then that's fine too. But the next part of that, I talked about the kids, when your kid turns 15, 20 years old or whatever. So throughout that time frame, as you're stacking those sats, you got to think about your time preference and your time preference as you parent. You got to showcase to your kid, what does a low time preference life look like? What does a best possible life look like? I'll tell you what, it's not scrolling Instagram at night. It's not, watching things you shouldn't be watching. It's not, looking at the bottom of a bottle 3-4 nights a week, eating seed oils and sugars, staying lazy and being apathetic to the world around you. It's getting stronger. It's being healthier. It's being more humble. And I think that kind of those things naturally fall into place because really when you're sacrificing your current pleasure for Bitcoin, which you hope is going to be for your kids or even for your grandkids, or in my case, I think about my great-great-granddaughter all the time. I'm thinking about her. I'm not going to meet her. She's like 100 years away probably, right? But I'm actively thinking, the sats, I stack sats every single day. The sats that I stack on July 30th, they're going to my great-great-granddaughter, and I love that. But I got 4 generations to dodge. I got to instill some pretty good principles into my son and my daughters, and I got to I got to hope that they instill some good principles into their, sons and daughters, and one more generation and one more generation. And so it's all about preparing the next generation for the future financially with Bitcoin, 2% going into Bitcoin, but also passing down the principles of what that good life is and can be.
Amazing. All right. So there's so much to Bitcoin that we will never fit all of it into a single chat about sats. So we ask each of our guests if they would be willing to come back on in 9 months to give us an update on their Bitcoin baby. Would you be willing to do that for us?
100%, man. Count me in. I'll be here and I'll be ready to rock and roll.
Let's recap the conversation here with Adam because it's been an absolute banger. Adam is in his early 30s from Canada, from Edmonton, and he found his wife Christina first. Okay, all right, and then Bitcoin. All right, it's the classic, which came first, Christina or Bitcoin? We have laid that one to rest here on today's episode. And when he found Bitcoin, he's like, this can't be true. This can't be real. This must be a scam. I'm going to go in here because I'm headstrong and I'm going to figure out how this doesn't work. And he charged, fearlessly into the decentralized aspects of Bitcoin, convinced that decentralization was a terrible idea, and went, wait, whoa, no, that's good. All right, let me turn my horse and lance at the encryption aspect. It's going to take a computer more guesses than there are atoms in the entire universe to try to crack my 12-word seed phrase. Okay, well, I'm getting a little bloodied up here. My horse is dead on the battlefield, but I'm going to draw my sword and run after the miners because that thing can't work. Wait, it actually does. It helps feed some of the other aspects. Oh my gosh, I need some Bitcoin. I'm not going to wire any money to, is it Mother Russia or Father Russia? I don't know. But whether it's the mom, whether Russia is a mom or a dad, they're not getting any of my money. I'm going to find a dude in Canada. He's going to jump into a car and, hand me a dime bag of Bitcoin is what it sounds like. And take your $100 bill, scan your address and scurry off back. We don't even know where, into the shadows. But you saw that, hey, I've got the Bitcoin now. It's unconfirmed. Now it's being confirmed. I can see my transaction ID. This is working. And several weeks later, you decided, very interestingly, and we didn't, this is stuff that we can unpack in 9 months. Your first thought wasn't, I'm hanging on to this sucker forever. It was, okay, I'm in. Can I get back out? Can I sell this? I bought it. Can I sell it? That you could put me in a room for 1,000 years, Adam, and say, your first step is to buy Bitcoin. What's the next thing? And I would never come up with the idea of selling. I'd just be like, sweet. I'm like, Smeagol got the one ring. Smeagol has the one ring, and Smeagol loves the one ring. And the nasty hobbitses aren't going to get Smeagol's ring. But you're like, let me test it. I love that you're like, can I put weight on this bridge? Does this car work? How, and somehow you were able to sell, you were able to get $100 back out, but maybe even have some Bitcoin left over, which means that it must have appreciated even in those few weeks, which was really interesting. You're like, all right, hold up. Now I will become a place where the locals can buy and sell Bitcoin. Not scurry away shadow car guy. It's going to be Adam in an establishment like McDonald's or Starbucks, and we're going to be humans together, and we're going to exchange Bitcoin. You went on a 5-year journey to build your business, Bitcoin Well, which included a 36-hour madcap through every dang old province in Canada, selling, dollars to whales for Bitcoin and making it all happen and getting up to $1 million cash, getting that into Bitcoin, flying home, empty backpack, just got the toothbrush in there. No mention of toothpaste. We won't look too closely at that. My dentist said that's just to incentivize you to brush anyways. It's the bristles that help break up the plaque, so it's no big deal.
Yo, and let's be honest here. We're not all using fluoride in our mouths, are we? Are we going to open this can of worms here? Or what's the...
He said, not my mouth. No. Oh, my gosh. All right. Toothpaste by decree? No. And actually my dentist, who is my uncle, he asked me one day, he was like, if you're on a stranded island and you can only have toothbrush or toothpaste, which one is it? And I was like, it's my toothbrush, Mr. Uncle Dentist. And he was like, wrong, it's floss. Floss is more important than either of those two things. And he slapped me across the head. He's like, get out of here and floss your teeth. So, you actually kind of committed to Christina very early on. You actually said, I think 3 weeks in, we're going to get married, and y'all hadn't even gone on a date yet. What an absolute Chad. I love when someone finds somebody and they know that it's their person. Mm-hmm. I have a similar story with Kristen, and I just love when husbands love their wives, because there's all this culture around in the TV and movies, oh, my old lady, or let me cheat on this girl, whatever. It's dude, it's okay to recognize that your wife is the greatest and the best, and that you're lucky and that you love her, and that you can have that. So you guys had some kids, your business is flourishing, you're on a 100% Bitcoin standard apart from the equity you have in your company. And you guys are raising a family up there in Canada to live a better life that is not constantly borrowing from itself or borrowing at the expense of various descendants. And, you know, it makes me feel good to hear that there's another Bitcoin dad who's thinking about the great granddaughter. I mean, let's absolutely go. I'm the fourth Arthur. I'm thinking about and the fifth is alive currently right now. And I've been picking out names for the sixth Arthur. And he's like, yeah, I'm 12. I'm 12, Dad. I'm not ready to have kids. Like, let's talk about what I'm going to name my son some other time. I'm like, okay, all right. We'll put a pin in that. Okay. But I think Magnus Arthur Pelto is pretty lit. I'm thinking about 6, 7, 8, 9, that generational wealth, and you are too. So absolutely outstanding conversation. Let's take a little brain break here with my friend Chris.
Wonderful. All right. So our founding sponsor here at Sat Chats is Ithaca Hummus. Okay. And we've got the classic flavor here. Stuart and I will act as your taste buds. We're going to be tasting on your behalf just to make sure this is as good of a batch as the last one.
Here we go. Cheers.
Oh, it's excellent. Excellent.
It's like I eat it and I'm like, it feels good. You know what I mean?
Would you say yesterday it feels like jumping into a cold pool after mowing the lawn?
Exactly. Yes, dude. It's creamy. It's got some saltiness, some lemon. Goes good on some woven wheat.
All right. Now, Adam, you may be wondering what I'm doing with this $50 bill here. It is in a glass case. We don't like to touch it or,
Yeah, it smells bad too. It's
yeah.
like, oh,
yeah.
Dirty.
It's dirty. It's dirty.
It's dirty.
So we like to offer our guests a little token of our appreciation for coming on to the show. And we give each guest their choice between $50 US dollars or $50 in Bitcoin, which Stuart has quietly been calculating as I've been talking. And that is 42,422 sats or $50. What's it going to be?
Yo, I think if anyone is not taking 42,000 sats, just strictly for the memes, but also for the generational wealth, that feels like a miss. So I will absolutely be taking 42,000 sats.
Wonderful.
Let's go. Yes, sir. Amazing.
All right, so what are we at now? That's 95 who have taken the Bitcoin.
Yeah. So you bring our show's scoreboard to 95 who have stacked the sats, along with 8 who chose the cash.
Need a little more time.
Sometimes we say they just need a little bit more time. And when they come back on in 9 months, we're like, all right. Let's get in here. Let's help you some more, dude. Let's try this again. Because we're dads. We can repeat ourselves. That's the only thing we do, actually. So from one Bitcoin dad to another, thank you for stacking those sats. For all you Satillionaires out there who liked what Adam had to say, you're ready to buy real Bitcoin from a strong, handsome, bearded Canadian Bitcoin dad of a company, you can go to bitcoinwell.com. And we would suggest that you go to bitcoinwell.com/satchats. Holler. There will be a nice, beautiful video from us explaining why Bitcoin Well, using Ithaca Hummus as our storytelling device. It's an absolute gem. I helped my dad sign up his pastor yesterday.
Come on, let's go.
3-way call. And my dad's like, I'm so happy. I've been orange peeling everyone. I'm like,
perfect.
I'm like, number one, we need that on a t-shirt. I'm orange peeling. Like what? I need an orange that's peeling down with like a Bitcoin coming out of it, So we got him loaded up on Bitcoin Well yesterday. You guys go there, get signed up, start stacking sats each week, 2% of your annual income each month. Let's go, right? That's fantastic. This is the part of the show where we ask you Satillionaires for your value in exchange for ours, just like we exchanged 42,000 plus sats for Adam's hot fire on today's show. We would like for you to exchange your subscription with us. Subscribe to our show on YouTube. And in exchange for that, because we're exchanging, we will enter you into a contest to win 2 million sats when we reach 10,000 subscribers. Not 42,000, 2 million. So smash the subscribe, have your wife smash the subscribe, go to all your dads in the neighborhood, have them smash the subscribe, find the Bitcoin lemonade stand, say, all you kids smash the subscribe. You can find information to sponsor and support the show in our show notes as well. Thanks so much for your time. Remember, Sat Chats is for educational purposes only and should not be construed as financial advice. Also, our guest's elite Bitcoin dad advice is his own. We'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.
Thank you.